Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite podcast, a podcast covering the ever-expanding and infinite multiverse of fandom. My name is Rob. I'm here with Courtney, as always, and Courtney, it's our big 2021 review episode.
Yeah, big stuff coming. We got 2022 is upon us, and we got to talk about what happened last year, because we started in August, and there's a couple months that happened before that, so there's a lot that we want to cover about fandom movies, non-fandom movies, games, TV shows, all that good stuff. So we will have all of that for you guys, and we're going to have a little bit of fun this episode. We got some fun categories in here.
Yeah,
This is basically the Oscars.
Yeah, the Oscars of podcasting.
Yeah.
If I don't mind putting us on a pedestal that early.
Yeah.
But first, we have some news. First and foremost, kind of a melancholy stop. Bob Saget passed away unexpectedly over the last couple of days. And, man, sucks.
Yeah.
We lost Betty White and Bob Saget within weeks of each other.
Right. I mean, this one's particularly sad because that's the TV dad. He's the gold standard TV dad, just preaching lessons subconsciously to you in the morning when Full House is on and you're getting ready for school, or at least that was my kind of, exposure to Danny Tanner. So Bob Saget, one of the funniest guys, and from what a bunch of actors and people that knew him said, one of the most genuine guys in Hollywood as well. So super sad. It's the fact that he's the TV dad.
Yeah.
He really is one of them, if not the TV dad.
Just a really fascinating professional life, honestly, when you look at his kind of the early 90s, obviously with Full House and hosts of America's Funniest Home Videos, kind of the precursor to YouTube in many ways.
Right.
And then obviously as a stand-up comedian, one of the raunchiest, most vulgar stand-up comedians to ever live.
It's so juxtaposed for what he was doing on Full House. So like when you discover that, it's like, oh my God, but he's absolutely hilarious. He's one of the funniest.
Yeah. Look up anything Bob Saget as far as stand-up shows. Even if you want to go check out the Comedy Central roast of Bob Saget, has some of the funniest bits I've ever seen. Norm Macdonald in particular, who also passed away within the last calendar year, was incredibly funny in that. And yeah, it's just sad. It seemed like the actual human being was closer to Danny Tanner than anything else, according to what so many of his friends have come out and said since. No easy way to transition from that, but now we're going to transition to some regular news. This Oppenheimer movie that we talk about occasionally, the cast just keeps getting ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, this is also Christopher Nolan's first movie without Warner Brothers, so this already has a little bit of, it has a little bit of oomph behind it, but who just got cast, man?
So, a couple weeks ago, Josh Hartnett was added to the cast, and now Florence Pugh has been announced to be joining the cast that already has Cillian Murphy in the lead role.
Right.
Robert Downey Jr. is in this, Matt Damon is in this, and Emily Blunt is in this, and now you're adding Rami Malek is also in this. So now you're adding Florence Pugh and Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, I mean, and you put Christopher Nolan before anything, I'm gonna watch it, and a bunch of other people are gonna watch it. I mean, he kind of has the moniker of like this non-fandom director that you're gonna, no matter what they drop, you're gonna go see. I think Denis Villeneuve is gonna take that kind of title over the 2020s, but as of right now, in my opinion, it's still Christopher Nolan. So anything that's coming out for him, and another period piece for him, because he had not done that since Dunkirk, yeah, right. So 2017 was the last time he did that. So I'm very excited and can't wait to see kind of where he's headed without Warner Brothers. This is a big stepping stone, and hopefully gives a lot more directors a lot of freedom to make choices for themselves and not have to rely on studios as much.
I totally agree. I'm looking forward to... I like all of his period pieces, so... I like most of his movies in general, to be honest.
Right. Is Interstellar a period piece, even though it's set in the future?
It could be, but... transitioning from that, we got a couple glimpses of what Thor and Jane Foster are going to possibly look like in Thor and Love and Thunder, and I'm loving the colors.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that I saw. So for those of you who hadn't seen it, the Jane Foster look is kind of similar to how she looks in the comics when she assumes the mantle of Thor.
Right.
And his costume is kind of what his current MCU costume, probably like the Age of Ultron-ish costume looked like, but the colors are just outrageous.
Right, yeah. I think they're going to kind of go... I kind of got this from the aesthetic that they did for the first teaser when they showed the new art for the title. It looks very 80s inspired, and I think that's not mistaken. I think it's going to be kind of like the first part of the movie, I think it's going to be like Rocky and Karate Kid inspired in terms of like training montages, because he looks in shape from all the behind the scenes footage. So
yeah, even the concept art piece of him is very old school Thor.
Right. I think there's going to be a training sequence with Star-Lord in the beginning of the movie where he gets back into shape. You know, he just beat Thanos. Everything is getting back to normal. So I think it's going to be him kind of 80s montage, you know, you're the best around type of thing that's going to happen. So that's going to be fun. This movie, I mean, it screams kind of that, you know, charisma that Taika Waititi has, and now that Chris Hemsworth is found as well, because, you know, he did not have a lot of fun reportedly playing Thor up until Thor 3, so definitely got him back in the role. And this was one of my fears before, was how long are these Marvel actors going to stay on for? And I mean, Chris Hemsworth, he looks great for his age. He's in his 40s, right? He's in his early 40s, but he does not look like it at all. So you can kind of get that sense that maybe he will, as long as Taika Waititi or somebody else that's really fun is on the project, he might just stay Thor, because that's a Thor thing. Thor's, you know, he's he's a god. He's not immortal, but he's near immortal, so he's going to be around for a while. So I kind of hope they keep that same thing for maybe like him or Hawkeye or just some of these other characters that they just don't die or pass the mantle as well, which we're going to talk about later.
Yes, we are. Yeah, I'm excited, obviously, for Thor: Love and Thunder. I think Thor Ragnarok kind of took over the zeitgeist of a lot of Marvel fans, because I think it was so unexpected. Like, people were kind of like over Thor, you know, not over him, but like as far as like his solo outings, they were like kind of a rough stretch there. And then Thor Ragnarok just blasted just a totally different tone, totally different feel, and that's obviously attributed to Taika Waititi. So him being involved in this one, well, he's directing it, but it feels like this is going to be even more of him than we got even in Thor Ragnarok, which is exciting. So Echo, some news coming out of there. Two writers, Dara Resnick and Ken Christensen, two writers who wrote for Daredevil and The Punisher, are going to be writing for Echo. And that is curious.
Yeah. Daredevil's going to be in this show. I don't think there's an if, and, or but about it. I think he's going to be in the show, and Wilson Fisk is just going to be the main villain of the show. And then I think they said this is only going to be 6 episodes. Is that supposed to come out this year as well?
It may, but these things are often fluctuating. Yeah. I mean, Ms. Marvel was supposed to come out at the tail end of 2021. That's been pushed back. So anything that says it's going to be released in 2022, just take that with a grain of salt.
I know we're getting Moon Knight relatively soon as well, which is going to be good. But in terms of that, I mean, you know, it's my favorite show. I mean, that's no secret. So Echo was a really good addition to Hawkeye, in my opinion. I thought she was, especially her individual episode, I thought was, I said it before on here, I think that's one of the best episodes of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows in the, almost 30 plus episodes that we've gotten. One of the best openings to an episode, kind of had to draw you into somebody that that really doesn't have, you know, this overly rich comic book history or this big cult following. So to add Daredevil in there, you know, an essential character to her, and as well as Kingpin, I think is a good idea if that happens. But I mean, this is basically Spider-Man No Way Home again. They're going to be in it.
Yeah, they're going to be in it, probably. Then to finish off, we got some DC things. We got full-fledged looks at both the Riddler and Penguin for the Batman, which comes out in a couple months.
Yeah. And I can't remember if we talked about the Bat and the Cat trailer, the latest trailer that dropped for that movie. There's no reason I have no fear for this movie that anyway. The biggest fear I have is this movie's just going to be decent, and you know how I feel. I think this might be one of the, not even superhero movies, I think this just might end up being one of the best movies of the year. I mean, Matt Reeves he has this understanding of that world, and I mean, he takes so much pride in his projects he works on. I mean, you look at the Planet of the Apes movies. I mean, if you break it down, it's kind of movies about intelligent apes, and then you get to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I can't believe that this is so real and kind of just this realism kind of just kind of thrown over it. So I feel the same way for the Batman as well. And this promo material, Riddler's gonna feel like a David Fincher-esque kind of, you know, like a Seven type of, you know, kind of villain. And I cannot wait to see that. It's just gonna be kind of a murder mystery. I actually was reading a little bit of Batman yesterday, and I was reading a little bit of Green Lantern with Batman in one of the stories. And I don't know, Robert Pattinson he has this facade that's over it that's like that a young Bruce Wayne would have. Because if you look, just to dive in a little bit, if you look at the Scott Snyder run of Batman in Zero Year, I think Riddler was one of the villains, and I remember the first complaints that Robert Pattinson got was, well, that's not Bruce Wayne. And I said, are you sure? Or is he just young and he hasn't figured it out yet? Because every Bruce Wayne that we've seen is either older or they're in their prime. Even Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne he already was made because he'd been through his League of Assassins training, which this Bruce Wayne probably has too, but this is year 2 in Gotham. If you read Batman Year 1, it wasn't he went out there and he was just, everything was solved. He was having real struggles, and I assume the same thing's going to happen as well in this.
Yeah, I agree. The Riddler design, I think, is really great.
Yeah.
It's purposely detached from what we think of when we think of the Riddler, in terms of comics. Goofy guy in a bright green suit with a purple tie and a bowler hat.
Right.
Purposely going away from that design to a more like Zodiac-esque kind of design, which I really dig, which I think really fits the tone of what this movie's presenting. And then, you get the Penguin side of it, who is appearing to be and sounding a little more comic booky, which is fine. Right. I think this movie does need to strike that balance between reality and kind of and fiction.
Right.
You know what I mean, to make it work. And I feel like the Penguin is going to kind of be that. Yeah. Like that's the role he's going to play, is to like remind you that like we're in a Batman universe and there's this kooky mobster who, thinks he has the leg up on everybody, but really doesn't.
Exactly. And not everything needs to connect, but if we're kind of going in this direction with a young Batman, Warner Brothers has a unique opportunity. A big part of me wants it to stay away and just be its own universe because I think they're on to something extremely special and something extremely rare. Like you said, that balance between realism and kind of that comic book-esque nature. But if they really want to expand, you can kind of start to introduce these characters. I think what a sequel might look like is trying to dive into some of the characters that actually have, powers. And that would kind of be an interesting direction to see if they're just going to stay away from that, kind of like how the Nolan trilogy did, and, stayed very realistic, or if they can kind of dive into some aspects of that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think a great villain, we're forecasting way, way, way in the future here, but I think a great villain to bridge that gap perhaps would be Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Just from the Arkham games, I think Mr. Freeze would be, and also from the Batman animated series, it's one of those villains where it's so much of a tragic backstory where I can bypass, the quote-unquote science miracles that happen to make this plausible and kind of just focus more on the character, which is what I think these movies are really going to focus on.
Yep, I agree. And then the other thing with DC, I just wrote here in my notes, the Flash ? Yeah. Because what is going on?
I have no idea, but apparently... So the rumor is that this movie is going to undo most of the DCEU, which I don't think is true, but Ben Affleck did say this is his last time playing Batman, but it is also his favorite time playing Batman, so I don't know. This movie's really interesting, and I have a lot of kind of step back fear about this.
Me too.
There's so much going on in a movie, and this is kind of what we were talking about with Doctor Strange, but in Marvel we trust, but this is my thing. It's a Flash movie at the end of the day. That's my fear about this, because I know we're introducing Supergirl, not Cara Danvers Supergirl. We're introducing what supposedly is going to be Henry Cavill's daughter, I'm assuming. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a cameo in the movie, but if that's the case, we have Superman, or Supergirl, we have Batman, we have multiple Batman. This is a Flash. Yeah, Zod's going to be in this movie, but this is a Flash movie. Spider-Man No Way Home's unique because, it was 3 Spider-Men that were in the movie. It wasn't like, and Daredevil was in the movie for a minute as Matt Murdock. It's not like he was running around, you know what I mean? So
even Doctor Strange wasn't in it that much.
No, they purposely got him away from the second half of the movie just so they can focus on the other Spider-Man coming back. But a movie like Doctor Strange, even, that's his whole shtick, is to kind of travel in the multiverse, is his whole thing. So him running into different versions and variants of other characters would make more sense. But a movie like this, where he's just rewriting reality, I know reality might be different and different characters might pop up, but it's also kind of the track record of the DCEU is why are we so focused on this? I know if you want to undo the universe, maybe just reboot at this point because the Snyder Cut's out. I know people want to see that continue. And part of me also does want to see that continue. I thought they had some really good ideas in the Snyder Cut as well. But if this is the next step, you just feel the disconnective tissue of Warner Brothers with the DC content. You really feel it. And this might be the cataclysm of all this.
Yeah, and we've talked about before that they have a good track record with solo movies, self-contained movies, and anytime they try to go into the shared universe stuff, that's where it all kind of falls apart, and that's where this feels like this movie is headed. Right. It's supposed to be a Flash movie. It's supposed to be a Flashpoint movie.
Right.
It was originally supposed to be a Flash and Cyborg movie, but now Ray Fisher literally wants nothing to do with Warner Brothers anymore. Right. So he's out, and now you have this Flash movie that the thing most people are most excited to see is Batman. Right. And it shouldn't be that way. And I know it sounds hypocritical because of what Spider-Man No Way Home presented. But at the end of the day, yeah, we were anticipating, Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire all together. But at the end of the day, we were also excited to see this Tom Holland story continue. Right. Separate from all the other stuff that happened in that movie that was incredibly well executed. But it feels like nobody's excited to see The Flash. Right.
It's like the thing the movie's about is what people are least excited for. Yeah. And that's a really rare thing. And I know, like I said earlier, like Doctor Strange, I kind of feel that, but I don't not trust Marvel to do it, especially with Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, even if we see different versions. And then a stroke of genius by them is to have the Strange Supreme from What If in that movie as well. So he's going to kind of garner a lot of attention. But a movie about one of the cornerstone superheroes of the world kind of focusing on these other Batman, these other versions, I don't know how well that's going to play out. So we'll see. Obviously, we could be wrong. It could work. But at this point, I don't know. I love The Flash so much. I was playing Injustice the other day, and I was going to say, like, that suit and that Barry Allen is really good. I mean, I was reading a little bit of Green Lantern, and their Flash popped up here and there. So it's just seeing Barry Allen all over the place. It's great to see how rich of a character he is. I know we've gotten spoiled with the earlier seasons of The Flash and kind of the development of his character, but man, I hope they figure it out with Ezra Miller's Flash. Like I said, they should have made him Wally West. I think it would have played better.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's also the real fear that Grant Gustin could show up in this movie and totally overshadow Ezra Miller.
That would be insane. Yeah.
Which is entirely possible. Right. Okay, yeah. So now, it's award season. Just had what do we have? The Golden Globes for the other night. Shout out Andrew Garfield. Mm-hmm. Yes. One for Tick Tick. Our guy.
Yes.
The patron saint of the podcast. Yes. Andrew Garfield. Yes. So first, we're going to start small, go big. So first category, favorite movie or show that you saw for the first time this year.
Movie or show that I saw for the first time.
Yeah.
Why don't you start?
Okay. I'm going to go with Yellowstone.
Oh, so you did watch Yellowstone.
Yeah. I watched the first season.
How was it?
It's good. It's a modern take on a Western. Okay. Which is kind of cool. It's Kevin Costner.
I'm on board. I'm in.
You should be.
I'm in.
It's like like I said, it's a modern take on a Western. It's a guy kind of just running his ranch up in the north, Yellowstone, and just the trials and tribulations that goes with that. There's a surprising amount of just a lot of political drama that goes on. It starts kind of slow, but then kicks up. I'm through the first season, and I'm excited to watch more, especially because people keep telling me about how crazy season 4 has been. So I need to get on that. But yeah, surprising. Just not surprising because I know I've heard that it's good, but just never had the time to get on board. So now that I finally got on board, been really liking it.
Nice. Awesome. So I have 3. I couldn't pick between the 3, and I was really trying to, so I didn't rewatch a lot of stuff this year, which was good. I watched a lot of stuff for the first time. The only things I really rewatched were the Spider-Man movies, and I just rewatched Dune a couple times because I have a problem. But I watched Heat for the first time this year. Oh, man. Amazing. So I have 3. I have Fargo, not the TV show, the original 1996 Coen Brothers movie with Frances McDormand and Steve Buscemi. Amazing. And Paris, Texas. I want to dive into Paris, Texas because that's a movie I don't think a lot of people, I mean, probably some older people and some real cinephiles probably heard of that, but I don't know how many people heard of that. I believe Josh Brolin said that's one of his favorite movies of all time too. And then I heard it on a podcast, and then I watched it, and I said, oh yeah, I 100% understand. So I'll start with Heat, because still holds up today how good that movie's shot. You want to talk about modern day action and kind of the upper echelon, Heat's there. And I mean, Heat, for God's sakes, inspired Grand Theft Auto 5. That's like a big piece of that is Heat. So basically, my favorite part about this movie is it's kind of the balance between the perfect protagonist and antagonist. I feel the same way about There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano. What it is, I love the scene in the diner. It's one of the most iconic, non-action scenes, I think, in a movie. It's for the sole reason that the admiration between the two of them, and if it's like a different universe, they probably would be best friends if they knew each other. But one of them chose to be a cop, and one of them chose to be a bank robber. So it's just the mutual understanding and respect that they have for each other, I think, is really unique to this story. And I mean, Michael Mann behind the camera is, for the most part, always a win. I mean, even Val Kilmer in this movie, I think I saw something where they used to show Navy SEALs the scene of him reloading his gun because of how accurate it was. I mean, that street sequence when they're in downtown LA after that bank heist is one of the best movie scenes I've seen from this year. And it's just an amazing movie. So one of my favorite watches that I've seen. Fargo, I mean, Francis McDormand, again, anytime you have Francis McDormand there, it's great. But the Coen brothers, they really crafted this kind of... I love movies that don't automatically just tell you the plot, and I know a lot of people are against that type of thing, but they don't think about it. That's why Interstellar, I always make the argument, that's why Interstellar's at a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, because people saw it for the first time, and they saw the last 30 minutes, they were like, what's going on? And then
the movie was over.
Right, and then the movie was over, and they're like, oh, it's bad because I didn't understand. I said, I don't think that's the issue, but to go into Fargo, it's an amazing kind of murder mystery, and I love the nonsensical natures of what the Coen brothers kind of relate back to, and then get to the core of human emotion. And it's always these plots about something that you take, Inside Llewyn Davis, for example, you take a movie like this, it's very, this would never happen. This is just so far beyond belief, and I say that knowing that this plot did actually happen. But it's what that 1 in a million real life thing that happens that they kind of played on. Yep. But the performances in this movie just amazing. Again, just hilarious in the most unhilarious points of the movie where it shouldn't be. People are dying, and it's just you're trying not to laugh. It's amazing. I love the way they direct, and obviously Roger Deakins was the DP on this movie, one of his most iconic movies as well. And then I watched this movie called Paris, Texas this year, and I'll never forget. I was scrolling through a bunch of movies, and I saw it, and I was just like, let me throw it on. And I love minimalistic movies too, so movies that aren't we need to save the day by this time, basically every fandom movie that we've talked about this year. And it's basically about this guy, and he's just roaming around Paris, Texas, and he's kind of missing. His name's Travis, and then he gets found. He gets a call. The guy that's kind of taking care of him for the time being calls his brother. His brother brings him back to California, and it's kind of about him reconnecting his son, and then they're trying to find his ex-wife so they can kind of reunite their family. But I kind of love just the wandering nature and kind of the existential dread, but it's shot incredibly well. It's just something that's super inspirational to me, and just it's probably my favorite watch that I saw for the first time that's not from 2021 this year. It's just incredible looking. Performances are amazing. Yeah, gotta love old movies. It's really the cornerstones and the stepping stones.
Yeah, and that's what you gotta respect about these older movies, because people go, the movie's not as good as people told me that it was, or whatever the case may be. But is it that, or is it just you're not realizing that some of these movies are literally the foundations of what other movies today are trying to emulate. We talked about this a little bit with The Matrix last week, where I was like, well, it wasn't as good as insert movie here that I saw. Well, you gotta recognize the fact that this was the franchise or movie that started, archetype A. Right. You know what I mean? So it's always good to go back and, if not watch these older movies for just enjoyment's sake, just watch them and recognize, be like, so that's where this came from.
Exactly.
So next category, best rewatch. So something that we rewatched that we enjoyed more, with some time between the first time we saw it and now. Why don't you kick us off, since I kicked off the last one?
Sure. You know what I picked? The Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Yes.
So
perfect.
I went into this movie with, full expectations, felt how I felt before, and it was 2012, so I was probably in middle school by this time, watching The Amazing Spider-Man, and, I definitely liked it. I had grown up, rewatching all the Tobey Maguire movies, and then I saw The Amazing Spider-Man again this year with all the No Way Home hype. And something just clicked in that movie, and I think it's what we titled the episode when we rewatched the movies, and it's The Perks of Being a Spider-Man. This movie, and I didn't realize it till this year, was a young adult movie, and you don't think about it until you watch it, because, like we said, the Tobey Maguire movies are really dramas, they're really heavy dramas. The Tom Holland movies are kind of, the first, especially Homecoming specifically, was more of like a John Hughes kind of take on a superhero movie. That's what it really felt like. But this one really, the first one specifically, not the second one, but The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is really, it's a young adult movie. It's a sci-fi young adult movie that has Spider-Man, and it works. And it works because of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. Their relationship is it's so pure. It feels so right that they're together. They're very, high school awkward together, and I believe every second of it. Their line delivery is perfect when they're with each other. And then just going into him as Spider-Man, I mean, the too cool argument, I just threw it out of the window because he acts how all these young adults would act in the mid 2000s to the mid 2010s. That was the archetype for all the young adult movies, was how Andrew Garfield acted. So I thought he did a great job. I mean, the legacy of him is just ever so growing after this year. So seeing kind of where he came from and where he is now with Tick, Tick, Boom, this, Under the Silver Lake, all these movies that people are going to start rewatching. The Amazing Spider-Man, I think, is kind of underrated. I really also like more Reese Fonz's The Lizard. The first half of the movie a little bit more than the second half, because the second half he just turned into what we saw in No Way Home, and it's basically what if the whole city was lizards, which kind of takes away from the first half, which was pretty interesting. I think they even cut out a scene in the movie with him and his son, which I probably would have kept in the movie. I mean, I think what we've kind of learned in this new era of superheroes is don't be afraid to flush out your villains if you're going to give them, because every movie is as good as their villains. I mean, it's kind of like you think about other villains. I mean, Thanos, we want full origin basically for Infinity War. That was a Thanos movie told from his perspective for most of it. The Joker, The Dark Knight was on TV, I think, in the background when I was doing whatever the other day, and same thing. It's kind of I like to say about that movie, it's the aura of the Joker is what kind of makes The Dark Knight. So don't be afraid to deep dive into your villain, because that's where the main point of contention is going to come for your hero as well, which it does in the first half of The Amazing Spider-Man. So yeah, I think I upped it to 3.5 stars, or 3 stars or 3.5 stars. So definitely something that, if you want this different take on Spider-Man, it's a fun movie. It's a pretty fun movie. Not the worst third act I've seen either. I've seen worse third. I mean, the crane thing is kind of the red herring.
The crane thing still bugs me.
But again, what Andrew Garfield gets is that core of Spider-Man. Just have a little bit of fun when you're swinging around the city.
Yeah, we've been singing the praise of Andrew Garfield on this podcast for a month now, and I feel very vindicated and very justified in doing so, coming off of No Way Home, where everyone was like, wow, that guy's really great, and we're like, yeah. We know. Right. We've been saying that. So yeah, I totally agree with you, because we both obviously rewatched all the Spider-Man films coming up to No Way Home, and the furious amount of texting back and forth between the two of us watching those Amazing Spider-Man films, just going, how good is this guy?
Yeah, right. Like I said, the opening in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I'll always say this, if there was somebody that went into a coma for the superhero era of movies, and they were reading Spider-Man comics their whole life, I would probably show them the first 10 minutes of The Amazing, not the parents' first 10 minutes, I mean the actual Spider-Man first 10 minutes of the movie. I would show them that, because I think that's some of the best Spider-Man you'll ever see. Even down to the scenes with Electro. I know we're talking about 2, but scenes with Electro. I mean, even the fight with Green Goblin at the end it's not bad when Gwen Stacy dies. It's not bad.
No.
Yeah. It's all the stuff with his parents is where that movie really falls, and all the setup for stuff that just might not come.
Yeah. So mine is I'm gonna stick in the superhero lane. I rewatched The Punisher. Really liked it. Both seasons upon a rewatch. Yeah. First season, I remember when it came out 2017, I liked it. Gave me more John Bernthal as Frank Castle, which I liked. Second season I wasn't as high on, but then rewatching both these seasons this year, I came out liking them both a lot more, particularly obviously John Bernthal and Ben Barnes, who plays Billy Russo. Both those guys are great, particularly the first season between the two of them. But everything about, I think I was so distanced from it by the time 2021 that was here, and then we got all these Disney Plus shows, so it was nice kind of counterbalance comparing kind of the Netflix era to Disney Plus. And man, he's just so good as Frank Castle. And rewatching that with the Disney Plus lens, it made me go, man, I hope they figure out a way to get this guy back.
Yeah, and I think they will. I think they're going to find... I don't know if that's going to be in Daredevil's season 1 of what I'm assuming he's going to get his own show. Maybe... I know that there's that subsection of Disney Plus that they're talking about, the Star section, where they're going to put more adult content there. Maybe that's a realm that he kind of stays in, because I'm assuming that's where they might want Deadpool if they don't get him in a movie, because I don't know how, keen Disney's going to be on having an R-rated movie out.
But also, at the same time, and this comes back to rewatching the show, it doesn't need it.
I don't think so either.
Because the best part of that show is him and the story behind his trauma and his tragedy. That's the most compelling part of the show. I mean, the violence aside, you can still show what he does to people without it being graphic and over the top. And even in the comics, they're making the Punisher a little more kind of timid, not tame, but, more palatable for the generic kind of comic book audience. And I think that's due in part because of how popular he is now in visual media. They kind of want the character to be accessible to everybody. Right. And why shouldn't they do that with Disney Plus? You know what I mean? People are concerned about this with Daredevil also. Like, it's going to lose the grittiness. The grittiness wasn't made Daredevil great. Right. You know what I mean? What made Daredevil great was the writing and the characters and the performances. It wasn't that it was, graphic and bloody.
And I think Moon Knight might do something similar to that. That might be the precursor to get Punisher and Daredevil back into the Disney Plus fold. So I don't have any reservations about that. And I think the Punisher, again, I like Daredevil the most, but I told you my favorite part of Daredevil was the Punisher arc in season 2, the first 4 episodes. I think it's some of the most perfect television that's ever been written, shot, recorded, and produced ever, and anything that I've ever watched. I think it's some of the most tight storytelling. It's very, very compelling from start to finish. The way they introduce him, I think you said it, he feels like a boogeyman. I said he feels like a specter almost when he gets introduced in Daredevil. And kind of, that doesn't go it's not just because of Punisher the character. Like you said, it's Jon Bernthal, how good of an actor he is. Like, when it's all said and done, I think Jon Bernthal is going to be one of the most underrated actors that's ever lived.
Underrated is a good word for him.
He's so compelling. I watched Sicario this year, and he was in there. I watched King Richard with Will Smith. He was also in there. It's just, every time he's on screen, he demands you to look at him and hear him. His voice is very iconic as well. So
even when you go, even looking at The Walking Dead, also, it's the same thing. Shane is still talked about to this day, and he was out of the show by season 2.
Right, exactly.
And people still talk about, Shane's presence on The Walking Dead, and that's because of Jon Bernthal.
Exactly, I agree.
Next category, Best Mantle Pass. Now, we originally conceived this category thinking about the Disney Plus shows, because Disney Plus Marvel shows, because all those stories were essentially about either mantle passing or kind of becoming something different, something new. But then we started thinking about it.
Yeah, there's a lot more mantle passing than expected.
Yeah. However, I am going to stick to Disney Plus. Well, I guess it's technically Disney Plus, but Black Widow paved the way for Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova, obviously having the mantle passed from Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff to her. From the moment she steps on screen in Black Widow to the moment she left the screen in Hawkeye, she's one of the most charismatic, enigmatic characters that we've gotten in the MCU to this point. Totally earns her mantle as the future Black Widow for the MCU. And that's the other thing kind of about this category when conceived of, like, not just having the mantle passed to you, but having earned the mantle. Right. And I think she earned it in Black Widow, like, kind of towards the end of the movie. And then in Hawkeye, you see kind of what the stepping stones are for her, like where she's going to elevate to in the future. And that's what I think this is all about, is elevating these characters to a believable point that they earn that title. That, whether she's going to be called Black Widow or not, that's not really the point. The point is she's stepping into a role that was played by Scarlett Johansson for 12 years. Right. Not easy to do. I mean, we're going to, I'm not going to step on you and spoil what you might say, but we're getting some pretty big shoes to have to be filled.
Yeah, right. Right.
You know, Riri Williams is coming as Ironheart, replacing Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. You know, some might argue that Tom Holland did that. Ha 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 ha.
Not after this movie.
Right, not after No Way Home. So yeah, Riri Williams is going to step in, you know, for that mantle. You're going to see She-Hulk step in for Bruce Banner. You know, we're moving Kate Bishop as stepping in for Clint. You know, we're replacing all these actors and characters, particularly the actors. I think the movies have created a unique situation, because this happens in comics all the time.
Exactly.
Where mantles are passed from one character to another, and nobody really thinks about it. But with movies and visual media, it's totally different, because you're replacing the character, but you're also replacing this actor that has been tethered to these roles for, in the case of the Marvel Universe, 10 plus years, which we say again and again, what Marvel is doing has never been done really in the history of movies. So, you know, that's an interesting experiment, man. And I just think going back to Florence Pugh being a new addition to this universe and this journey that she's just starting on, like when you think about where Scarlett Johansson entered the fold in Iron Man 2 to where she ended up, Florence Pugh is now beginning that journey. Will she be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a decade on? Who knows? You know, but as far as that mantle being passed, I think perfectly done.
Cool. You didn't spoil mine, and you know why? Because I just switched it right now. I had an epiphany while you were speaking, and I wanted to make sure I didn't do a Disney Plus show because there was another movie that came out this year. We had a Bond movie this year, and some mantles were passed in that movie, or some mantles were taken, honestly, in that movie. So I picked Lashana Lynch taking over for Daniel Craig as my mantle of the year, and I think that was one of the best aspects of No Time to Die, in my opinion. I think Lashana Lynch, she has so much charisma, she has so much kind of energy that she brings to all the roles that she plays, and I really had a lot of fun with her kind of being this 007 that says, I don't really care what you did before, I don't care how many times you saved the world, they picked me and I'm doing a great job. I don't have any reason to believe I'm not. She's very suave, she has a suave nature about herself too. She's kind of like in that movie, she's kind of like the female Mahershala Ali. She's very like cool, calm, and collected, and I really enjoy that too. So I would love to see more of her as 007, because she's not James Bond, it's the moniker of 007, which obviously she gives the Bond, but spoiler alert for No Time to Die, Daniel Craig quote unquote dies at the end of the movie. He gets he gets blown to bits in that movie. So really beautiful ending. I rewatched the ending of that movie, and him and his baby mama, I guess, that's a very, very good performance by the two of them. Daniel Craig was amazing in that movie again. Yeah, No Time to Die. I enjoyed that movie a lot. And then I know we talked about kind of Rami Malek as the Catholic villain, but it made sense because they wanted to, you know, justify the lineage of Bond, and kind of that was the goal, that was the standard, and kind of, you know, Pierce Brosnan before, that kind of was how it went. But yeah, I really like Lashana Lynch. I think her as Nomi in the new 007 would be interesting if it was even like a smaller TV show, if they wanted kind of to explore, or maybe just like another movie before, like to bridge the gap, maybe just something where we can kind of get a little bit more of her. But in terms of mantle passing in a singular movie, I think that was a pretty fun one.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, she got the 007 moniker, and it's kind of the idea of what we kind of got in Into the Spider-Verse, the first one, where anyone can wear the mantle if they're willing to, you know, die for country. So
yeah, that's really good. Next category is a show-specific category. We're going all the way back to the beginning of the year. WandaVision Mania.
Oh my gosh.
Ran wild. So this category is our favorite WandaVision theory.
I'll let you go first on this one.
So I think what I want to do is probably go with, in hindsight, it does seem a little silly that, and I know it was technically going to be in the show because of pandemic reasons, but it worked out. Doctor Strange showing up at the end of this thing would have been very jarring.
Yeah.
And it was honestly a theory that everybody had pegged from like the beginning of the show. Like, oh, Doctor Strange is going to come in, and it went from he's just going to appear to he's going to fix everything by the end of this. And that's kind of the variance of these WandaVision theories, where like things started here and then they just escalated escalated.
Yes.
Constant escalation.
Right.
It's like the TVA, like in Loki, like when the timelines were branching and it hit that apex point, red line of no return.
Right.
That's where these WandaVision theories were going.
Yeah.
And the Doctor Strange one, I thought it was plausible that he could pop up in like the end bit when she's in the cabin, but like people were like, he's gonna show up and like shut her down. I'm like, you guys realize that this is a show about her and Vision, right?
Right. That's set on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And you're asking Benedict Cumberbatch to come on a Disney Plus show.
And do like a big action set piece.
Which is, in retrospect, maybe not as crazy now, but that was the first show. And I mean, again, with the kind of the whole thing where all the theories kind of ran rampant, that makes sense why they were running rampant. I mean, because we didn't have any expectation. We didn't know because the whole sell of these Disney Plus shows were, hey, all these characters that you just saw in Avengers Endgame, they're getting TV shows now. And it's, okay, so it's going to be similar budget. It's going to be, bigger shows where anything can happen. And maybe we should have, kind of just took a deep breath and said, why don't we just appreciate the core of the show? And I think that's why a lot of people misrated the show, in my opinion, is because of the theory casting. As something that Star Wars suffers heavily from is this idea that if your theory doesn't come true, then the show is bad. And I said, is it, or are you just upset that what you wanted to happen?
There's an element of that to this. Right. Honorable mention too, because this was assisted by the enigmatic Paul Bettany,
right?
The mysterious actor that he was working with, quote unquote,
right.
That he said he'd always wanted to work with, and that he had incredible chemistry with, and when people see it, they're gonna lose their minds, and it's just him. It's him. It's the White Vision. People were running absolutely mad.
You want to tell them the big one that they thought it was?
Al Pacino?
Yeah.
Al Pacino was supposed to be in WandaVision?
Insane. Why would Al Pacino sniff a superhero movie? Why? A TV show on Disney Plus? No. And my theory is nuts that I picked, and absolutely not.
Yeah, that gave me. They were just. People were throwing out names left and right of who Paul Bettany could be talking about that he'd never worked with before. And when you go back and actually watch the clip instead of reading what he said, it's very tongue in cheek. I think if you actually watched the interview with him, you could pretty tell right away that he's being very sarcastic and he's leaning into it. And you can probably guess from there that he's talking about himself.
Right.
And all the power to him. That scene was very good. He was right.
It was probably the best part. It was one of the best parts of that finale.
So why don't you take it from here?
You don't have any proof, because I definitely did text you this, but you're gonna have to look all the way back to March for these text messages, so you can't hold this against me in a court of law. Shout out Matt Murdock. But the Reed Richards theory was running insane.
Stemming from the infamous
aerospace
engineer.
Right. So it was episode 4/5, and Monica had just gotten out of the Hex, and she said, we need to get back in there so we can kind of either, bargain with Wanda or shut her down. So she said, I know an aerospace engineer. And then immediately after, it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning on Twitter, and the internet said, oh, thank God we're going to introduce Reed Richards. And you have no proof of it, but you probably do, that I said possibly this could happen. And in retrospect, I think I'm an idiot for even contemplating that could have happened. Because again, this was a Disney Plus show about the relationship between a robot and a witch. So I apologize.
The idea that they were ever going to introduce one of the cornerstones of the Fantastic Four.
Right, and probably of this next 3 phases of Marvel might be the most important hero. Right.
When the Fantastic Four is not even coming out until, who knows?
Yeah, 2024, I think.
2024 or beyond. Right. And the idea that they were going to backdoor Reed Richards into WandaVision.
Right.
Is craziness.
Yeah. In my defense, I was reading Jonathan Hickman's Avengers, the New Avengers, which Reed Richards is probably the most important character again in there. So I do take some blame, but yeah, that theory was the
aerospace engineer,
right? That just turned out to be just a random military person.
It was everybody from Reed Richards to Hank McCoy
to Blue Marvel,
right? Boy, I think that and the Mephisto thing are the two big crazy. I didn't want to say the Mephisto thing because it's too obvious.
And then the honorable mention is the Fox X-Men, or just the mutants in general, because she is a mutant. So
that the people in Westview were going to become mutants.
Right.
Oh, geez, the Mephisto stuff.
Yeah, the Mephisto one was Mephisto Mania.
People were dissecting dialogue, looking at still frames of stuff going on in the background. It was WandaVision Mania will never be replaced.
Right. And it was Agatha all along.
It was just Agatha. They were just like, the person that we are clearly telegraphing to be the villain. She's the villain. And people were like, what?
This show's bad now. What do you mean she's the villain? Yeah, she's the villain.
Also, Catherine Hahn is amazing.
Yeah, she is. She's phenomenal in that show. There's a reason she got nominated for an Emmy.
And got her own show now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she did get her own show. Right.
Okay, next category is a fun one for us. So this is the best #, all capital letters, acting performance in a TV show or movie.
You want to spill the beans behind the origin of this? Because I want to coin this.
So the background of this is basically so we go to Arrow, was it season 6? This is Arrow season 6. There's a scene where Stephen Amell, Oliver Queen, and David Ramsey's John Diggle are in the Arrow cave, and things just kick off. and I texted you after that scene happened, and I just put #, and in all capital letters I put acting.
Yes.
So basically what this award is an actor in a show or a movie that has no right being as good as they are in whatever it is they're acting in, but they just absolutely just steal the scene, steal the show, just make you go, that's acting. Acting. You did acting. Congratulations.
I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
I want you. I know what you picked, and I want you to kind of deep dive into this. But I picked Kristen Stewart and Spencer. I mean, I think she should win Best Actress this year at the Oscars. I think this is I hate to say easily because it's so subjective. Acting is subjective because it is art, but I think she should win, and it was my favorite performance of the year. I don't think anything came close in my opinion. Possibly Andrew Garfield in Tick, Tick, Boom, but that might be a favoritism thing, even though he was absolutely incredible.
He is the patron saint of the podcast.
Exactly, right. But I'll never forget, so I went to a super small theater because that's the only place that was showing Spencer, and I wanted to make sure I saw this in theaters, and
keep that thought for the back of your minds later when we get to a different award.
Exactly. So I get in there, and there's like 4 other people in there, and it was the perfect storm. So I was in there, and I love experiences like that because as much as, we love the big Spider-Man No Way Home, Avengers Endgame kind of big spectacles of crowds cheering and big hero moments. In my opinion, that's the true cinema experience to me. Not to sound like Quentin Tarantino, but it kind of, the blacked out room where you kind of engulf yourself and like you can't feel your presence anymore. It's just you in that film for a little bit is one of my favorite experiences. And Kristen Stewart kind of sold me on this whole idea of that. And what she brings to this role is something I've never seen from her. I mean, I have in Personal Shopper. She kind of had like the outskirts of it, but you can kind of feel just in terms of direction and kind of the choices that she made as Princess Diana. It's just, I think I tweeted about it. It's kind of, she feels like she's in like this kind of, this haunted house, this whole place, and kind of, the conspiracy theories about the royal family, but her performance is just it's so raw. It's an extremely raw performance where when you see it for the first time, you're like, you can't help but feel kind of like uneasy by everything that's around her. You kind of feel yourself in her shoes of how she kind of might have felt. And I said about the movie too, I thought the movie was just going to be more of a biopic, but it kind of turns into a character study, which I think is one of the best choices and what turned it into one of the best movies of the year. But it's the best performance she's ever given in her entire life, and I think this might be the door that opens for her to be, one of the more prolific actors that we have working today. It's so funny that if I said this in 2012, people would have been like, what are you talking about?
You could also make the same case for Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, right, that the two of them, it's almost as if, if you're not in a great movie that's well directed, that you might not give the best performance, and that they're the perfect storms of both of that. So this is her kind of, the first time for me for Robert Pattinson obviously was Good Time in 2016, and I think this is her good time. This is the one where she might just hit the ground running and just get role after role, so I couldn't be happier.
And here's why I like you picking that in the spirit of this award, because if you had told me we were making a Princess Diana movie, and Kristen Stewart was going to play Princess Diana, I would have told you to get out.
Right. Exactly.
Because you would never in a million years think to cast Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana. They just present themselves as two polar opposites.
Right. But that's why it's #acting.
Yes.
Because you're acting. Right.
So here's where I'm at with this. So I was going to do Willem Dafoe because that guy is operating on a whole different frequency in Spider-Man No Way Home. Just it's unbelievable. However, what dampens him a little bit is because he's also matched by Andrew Garfield in that same film. So I feel like this award needs to be like a solo act where like you don't know, you forget everything else that happened. It's just that one person. So I'm going all the way back to the beginning of 2021 to a little film called Mortal Kombat.
Oh.
And Josh Lawson, I had to Google his name just now, who plays Kano, did some #acting in that movie, the likes of which we may never see again. Because I couldn't tell you what happened besides that guy when he came into the movie. He's just in his Australian glory, just running amok, cursing and just stealing the scene and everything he's in. Liu Kang hits him with a fireball and he's like, never mind all that nonsense. You just shot a fireball out of your hands. How'd you do that? It's the egg roll thing. It's getting constantly leg swept.
Right.
The guy is incredible.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that performance is that movie was very serious. Yeah. And then he came on screen, and it was very much, oh, okay, we're gonna have a little bit of fun now, because it was kind of dark up into that point, because we had that unexpected opening sequence where I was like, oh, okay, they're really taking this kind of shot and attempt at a very, very not realistic, but a very kind of darker and, more grounded version of Mortal Kombat. And then he gets on screen, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm watching Mortal Kombat. I forgot.
Kano wins.
Right.
He punches a hole through a reptile, and he says Kano wins.
Yeah.
I got freaking laser beams. What do you got? It's better than what you got.
Right.
And the fact that he was so good, and up until 2.5 minutes ago, I didn't even know who he was. That's the spirit of the award.
It's good.
It's the guy who played Kano in Mortal Kombat. His name is Josh Lawson. He's fantastic. He's the only reason I want to see another Mortal Kombat movie.
Too bad he met his demise in that movie.
Nobody's ever done Mortal Kombat.
That's true.
So, yes, Josh Lawson, Kano, Mortal Kombat, congratulations. You win my award for best # all capital letters acting performance. So we're going to transition to most surprising movie. So this can be surprising in a good way or surprising in a bad way. So I guess I'll kick this one off. I'm going to go with... changing my mind midstream. I'm going to go with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Okay. My other one that I was tossing up between was Black Widow, because it was a movie that I didn't really care about, and then I saw it, I went, pretty good. But Shang-Chi, I think, hits higher heights.
Yeah, it does.
Than Black Widow compared to the expectations. Because the difference between Shang-Chi and Black Widow is, I don't know if you know this or not, because we may have just talked about it, but Black Widow has 10 years of experience on Shang-Chi, right, as far as people knowing who she is and Scarlett Johansson portraying her. So I think the floor was lower and the ceiling was probably lower by proxy, because people were like, do I really care about a Black Widow movie that's taking place before Infinity War?
And after we know what already happens to her as well. It really was a Yelena Belova backdoor pilot.
Yeah, and it was good. I did enjoy it. But Shang-Chi... I don't know what my expectations were for that movie. It was a new character, new actor. I expected some pretty slick hand-to-hand stuff, but that's just because knowing who the character is. He's Shang-Chi, the master of Kung Fu, so I expected some, and we got that in spades. There were some incredible action sequences, but I don't think I was prepared for how much I was going to like Simu Liu. Yeah. And that was the standout for me. I rewatched it when it came on Disney Plus a little while ago. I liked it even better the second time. It's one of my favorite Marvel movies that they've done. And if you had asked me before the movie come out, do you think this is going to be in your top 5 Marvel movies? I'd go, no. No, it can't. How can it ascend to that pantheon where, Captain America the Winter Soldier is, Guardians Galaxy 1, Infinity War? Like, how is it ever going to crack that kind of pantheon? And to me, it did. which is incredible when you think about it, especially, you know, in retrospect. I don't mean to compare it to drag it down, but when you look at Eternals, which also introduced new characters, new cast, even a more well-known cast, but man, Simu Liu is so good. Awkwafina is one of the best comic relief best friends we've gotten in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I was surprised. I think I said this maybe when we did the review, but it left me feeling the same way that I felt leaving Guardians 1, where I was like, I don't know what that was, and I don't know where it came from, but that might have been one of my favorite movies. And that's why it was so surprising to me, because I didn't expect to feel that great about it.
Right. And you talk about that Guardians 1 comparison, and I definitely feel you on that. And this is my main thing about Guardians 1 specifically, and why it's my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and why I really like Shang-Chi. There's this heart about this movie, and it's unexplicable for a little bit because you can't really put your finger on it for the whole time, but that's also kind of a good thing, where it's this overarching aura that kind of surrounds this movie. Of it has this, because on the forefront, it is a movie about this kid who was trained to be an assassin by his ancient father, who's just kind of like a hitman now, and he stays in America, and then his father comes back to find him. Cool. But at the core of it, even when Wenwu meets his demise, even when you're talking about the scene where he says, I have to kill my father, like, all those smaller sequences in the movie I really enjoy. And I was hit about the last sequence in that movie where he's kind of, you know, running up the Great Protector's back to kind of kill the Dweller in Darkness. That would have been unforgivable, but that movie had earned that point. It had earned everything there. And I mean, just the music behind it as well, and kind of Simu Liu's performance as well. Like, that movie it encapsulates like a great family drama, like it really does. And I said this too, I kind of said this about Michael B. Jordan in Creed 1, where, because I know there's people that don't love Michael B. Jordan's acting 100%, and it's kind of, Simu Liu, he talks with his fists a little bit, and I kind of like that. Like, it's a very kind of artful movie too, and like, I love the movements and kind of the martial arts that they portrayed in that movie. It's just, like I said, the heart of that movie is really what makes it for me.
Yeah, and one more thing before I turn it over to you. We talk about Mantle passing. He kind of earned being an Avenger by the end of that movie. Like, when you see him with Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers and Wong, you're like, that feels right. Like, he should be there. Like, I want to see him interact with these kind of bigger kind of characters. Like, like, I want to see that, which I think is a testament to the movie and a testament to him. Is like, he earned it by the end of that. It doesn't feel out of place. Like, it's like, I want to see him with Wong and Doctor Strange and, you know, rubbing shoulders with Avengers. Like, that's where I want to see that character.
Agreed.
You know? So what about you?
So, there's a movie that came out in the last couple of months and dropped on Netflix, and I had no expectation to this movie. Honestly, I was kind of holding my breath about this movie because I didn't really expect much from it, and I thought it was a bit gimmicky. So I'm talking about Netflix original movie, The Harder They Fall. And when this movie, the promotion started running for this movie, I said, all right, cool, really good cast. You have Regina King, you have Idris Elba, you have who might be one of the biggest actors, and then by 5 years' time might be one of the biggest actors on earth, Jonathan Majors. You have who else? We got R.J. Seiler. There's Lakeith Stanford. Like, this cast, Zazie Beetz as well. Like, I can keep going, and I think I want to finish out with Delroy Lindo. Like, there's just an incredible cast. So basically what this is it's a Western told in, I think it's the late 1800s. It's about these black cowboys, and I believe they're in Texas, and it's about you see a kid in the beginning with his family, and a man just kind of pulls up to their house and he kills his parents and he scars him for life, and that kid classic. And that kid grows up to be Jonathan Majors, and you find out that it's Idris Elba's character, the villain of the movie, that's the one that killed his parents. And I don't want to spoil the end because I was not expecting the ending reveal, but just kind of, it's a classic Western tale in modern day. It was one of the most surprising movies. like I said about the gimmick thing, I thought it was very gimmicky. I just thought it was going to be some kind of cheesier Western, but this movie had, at the core of this movie, it was a whole lot kind of darker, and it was like, it really had this nice pace about it too. It was kind of like a train almost. Like it had a very nice energy about the entire movie. I mean, down to the performance, and this is one of the most stylish movies that you'll see this year. I mean, James Samuels that did this movie. I think this is like his second movie that he directed, if I'm not mistaken, or either his first or his second one. And you wouldn't believe it if you watched it. I know that I believe it was Jay-Z was the executive producer on this, but you can tell there's a lot of time and care that went into this to kind of get that realism of what these cowboys were dealing with in the 1800s, in the late 1800s. I didn't expect anything from this movie. I had no expectation, and it turned into probably one of my top 5 favorite movies that I watched this year. Just incredible performances by these titans of industry, and leaves the back door open for more if you want. Like, it's everything you want out of a movie. And again, I think what makes movies, in my opinion, is just kind of like that heart that you can have to it, and kind of that relation to human emotion. So as ever cool as some of the sequences are, or the camera work in this movie, also extremely phenomenal too. But when you get down to it, I mean, Jonathan Majors gives one of the better performances of this year, in my opinion. I mean, him as the one, he who remains in Loki in this. I mean, he's got so much talent. I can't remember who I said this to. I think what's going to make him one of the best actors kind of going forward in the next couple of years, he has awkward charisma. Mm-hmm. He has a more relatable charisma than like somebody like Denzel Washington would have, because it's very natural for Denzel. But like Jonathan Majors is probably a kid you might have seen in theater class that grew up and got popular. Like, that's who I feel like when I see him anytime he does anything. So it's like, he's somebody that you can possibly know, because like Denzel's like an unknowable person, you know what I mean? But like, I do, Jonathan Majors is like,
he feels larger than life,
right? But Jonathan Majors does, and I think that's what makes him so relatable. So yeah, amazing performances. Again, Regina King, amazing. Lakeith Stanfield, amazing. And my standout from that movie was R.J. Seiler from Power Rangers fame, from the Power Rangers movie. He played kind of this cocky gunslinger that he was younger than everybody else, that really had a chip on his shoulder, and he just had this really fun arc of, about that. It's like, I'm bulletproof right now, so I'm going to test my theory on that. So I thought that was really cool. But incredibly tight movie, really well paced. I really have no complaints about that movie, and in terms of surprises, that was number one easily for me this year.
Cool. Well, I hope you're not tired of talking, because this next category is tailor-made for you.
Oh, no.
As in, your name's in the title. So this award is favorite movie that Courtney saw that nobody else saw. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but he throws out an awful lot of titles and an awful lot of people that 85% of people don't know.
I resent that, but I'll take it.
So
I'm gonna become the very thing I swear to destroy. I'm gonna become the one that I'm gonna have to turn into the one that also makes the movies that nobody talks about. Maybe I'll sneak one that people talk about in there.
So you said something earlier, and it didn't even sound like you were speaking English. So
it's because it's not English.
All right, see, perfect. So what is your movie that you saw?
So I saw Minari at the beginning of this year.
See what I mean?
It easily was the most beautiful movie that I've seen this year. So basically what this movie is, it's Steven Yeun, obviously from Walking Dead fame. It's the American dream story, basically. So he moves his family from Korea to America, to Arkansas, to the Midwest. And it's just about the trials and tribulations of a Korean family. So basically Korean-born parents and Korean-born children, but the first generation that would kind of, if we talked about now, they would be the first generation, their kids would be the second generation, their grandkids would be the third generation. And when you talk about kind of themes of this movie, it's one of the most genuine themes, and it's like I think it's a movie that everybody should watch, because it's something that we can really use. And it's this beauty about how similar everything is. It's kind of what I felt about Mudbound, that also came out on Netflix a couple of years back. It's the same thing in terms of we're not so different, as much different as we kind of feel that we are, how different we could look. We're all trying to achieve the same thing when it comes down to it. So it's just, he's basically a farmer. So he's just it's just a movie about a guy that's just trying to possibly save his marriage, because stuff starts to get a little bit rocky. But it's kind of what the interesting thing they tell it at the perspective of the son. So the son, I think he's maybe 10 in the movie, and the son gives such
the actual son.
Oh no.
I was like, whoa.
Oh, no. No, so yeah, I forget the actor's name, but it's just such really genuine performances in this movie, incredibly shot, and man, it's just this. So I watched an interview with Lee Isaac Chung, the director of this movie, and he had a similar experience because he is the same thing. He's first generation. I think he said he's second generation Korean American. So it was really inspirational for me in kind of, an elevated way instead of the content of the movie versus, he even said in there, he almost was just going to be a film professor at some college because he said, I kept writing and making stuff and nobody was kind of buying it or, buying into whatever my content was. And he said the easiest piece of advice that I gave myself and that I got and why this movie kind of blew up the way it did is because I wrote about what I knew, and that's just something so genuine, and this is one of the most genuine movies you'll ever see. It has this genuine nature of this kind of real life struggle that people have every single day, even to this day, and will continue to have until the end of time. It's just the nomad way of, I'm going to move to a different country to better the life. And I really like Steven Yeun's character because obviously there's no kind of villain in this movie, but what he has to play is he easily could have kept his family in Korea, but it's very personal to him because he says, it's kind of like, why would I want to move my family away? I know it might not be the best decision right now, but I know I'm doing this for you guys, but I'm also doing it for me. Like, I need to know that I accomplished something in my lifetime that my kids can look to and be proud of. So yeah, this movie, it hits so close to home. Like, it's just a very, very genuine, very beautiful movie in the way it's shot. I listen to the score from this movie from time to time, just really, just beauty, radiates beauty.
Nice. And I mean, you hit an important point. It's a simple thing, but it's an important thing in terms of creating and storytelling is right way
Mm-hmm.
It sounds simple and it sounds like that's something you shouldn't do because you can, people create these fantastic worlds, but even amongst those fantastic worlds is the mind of the creator
right
usually is in there somewhere, even if it's not, on the surface. And I think that's an important lesson in terms of creating stories is don't panic about creating the next Lord of the Rings
right.
or, you know what I mean? Just write what you know. Right. Start with your surroundings and there's a compelling story in there. I used to say this all the time when I did, student teaching and, teaching, writing is, everyone has a story to tell.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was always the first question I used to ask people is how many of you fancy yourselves storytellers? And nobody would raise their hands. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you all tell stories every day.
Right.
Whether you think of it that way or you don't, everybody's a storyteller in their own right.
Right.
Just write what you know. Write what you've experienced. Take yourself out of it. Insert a different character. Change elements around. That's the fun of storytelling is you can take a grounding in something that and then tweak something here and there. Mm-hmm. And, maybe you have a lived experience that you wish would have turned out differently.
Right.
Write that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always kind of one of my foundations of storytelling is writing what you know, because it gives you such an intimacy with whatever you're working on. It makes you want to go back to it. At times, maybe you don't want to finish working on a project, but when you have the learned experience, you're like, no, I know the story. I just have to put it out there.
Right. And I think that goes down to kind of like the core for storytelling for me. And I know a lot of people ask me why I want to do what I do. And it's kind of the relation piece and kind of the where we're at is very fantastical, and kind of the movies that we see every day. And I think I talked about this when we talked about No Way Home. It's every movie we see is supposed to be the biggest movie of all time. Cool. Those movies are amazing. Awesome. These different worlds that we can look at. But there's something very special about movies that are just a guy or a woman or whoever it is just living their life. Like that's the core of storytelling in my opinion. And I always tell people, like, if I were to ever teach a class on this, like, I feel like my first lesson, the Mr. Miyagi lesson would be like, it's kind of like the karate's used for defense. Mine would be very much storytelling is just life. That's it. Because if you look at every movie, every book, every TV show, every comic book, every video game, every piece of literature that's written, what is it written about? It's written about life. At some capacity, it's written about it's something sentient and it's life based. That's what most, if not all, fictional storytelling is told it from. So even non-fictional storytelling, it's probably life unless you're watching like a video on how to make something. But at the end of the day, it's got to be personified by somebody. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where my core comes from, and I think that's what this film catches just so immaculately. So definitely one of my favorite watches of this year. It almost was my favorite watch of this year. Amazing movie. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I bought it as soon as I could, and I don't regret it one bit.
Cool. See, we can do deep. Nerds. Take that, nerds.
That was my application to film school right there.
It was good. So, next category, favorite game of the year.
You just want to say it on 3?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Guardians of the Galaxy. So look, we did a whole episode on that. Well, half of a whole episode on this. It's not the best game technically, but I told you this before we hopped on. It goes back to the storytelling piece. A technically proficient game can be great. I know Deathloop was great. Returnal was great. But, I mean, the characters in Deathloop are pretty great. But there's something about that Guardians game that the movie captured as well as the wholesomeness of the characters, the depth of the characters, and that's where I attached to. I finished that game thinking that's one of the best games I played this year. And it goes back to the expectation piece. I didn't have that expectation. And sure, maybe that does help what I felt about it at the end, is that I was so blown away by it that in the end I was just so... The performances are great, and we made the comp in the episode to the Avengers game, and I think the best thing about it, and I thought about this earlier today when I was marinating on these categories, was the Avengers voice cast is sensational. It's a who's who of video game voice acting. It's Nolan North. It's Laura Bailey. It's people that you know. This Guardians cast is not that. I would have to Google them now what the names of the voice actors are, but they're all so good, and the dialogue is incredibly well written, and just you just want to spend time listening to the characters talk, and you don't get that a lot in games. Rarely ever. It's moving from one set piece to the next. That's why The Last of Us is such a good game. It's the walking and talking. It's the same thing here, and we talked about it in the review. The characters never shut up, which is a good thing, which is how the Guardians of the Galaxy should be.
In a movie it should be more show than tell, but in a video game you probably want to you have the ability, because you're talking about not a 2-hour movie, a 2 to 3 hour movie. You're talking about 10 plus hours of content. So I think what this game gets right is it's the understanding how big the Marvel cosmic universe is, and that nobody's really dived that deep into. Not even the MCU at this point hasn't dived that deep into it, but that comics have. Like, you have the whole baseline for it, and you can tell they really did their homework and their research, because they're just throwing out characters. Because I think I texted you, I was like, I can't believe that they just threw this in the game, because again, it's the expectation piece of what we didn't get with the Avengers, what we could have gotten, because the gold standard is the Avengers movies, and then we got this game that didn't hit that, but it's the vice versa of that. It's the Guardians of the Galaxy, where again we didn't know a lot about them, but then they kind of focused on the one thing that's super important, that's storytelling. The Avengers game felt very much like, let me just get to the end of the game just so you can just do multiplayer and just do whatever. But this game is a full out story of kind of this new team of people that are being thrown into this team, whether it be just they recently joined the team or they've been on the team for a while, and kind of this dysfunctional family that has to fly around space, keeping everybody cool, keeping their moniker of the Guardians of the Galaxy held tight so people will trust them to go on missions. And then it gets so much deeper than that. Again, something that Jedi Fallen Order did really well. I was just playing that yesterday. It's kind of understanding the ins and outs of not just, again, this needs to be done by this time, but it's that character building out. It's something that Fallen Order does really well. It understands something about, not even that the movies really deep dive on, and it's the religion aspect of the Jedi. It's something I really think that game does, like, I really enjoyed about that game. It's not just, we already know what the Jedi are, cool. We already know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are, cool. But can I let me focus on Drax the Destroyer and his family a little bit more than the movies have. And then for Fallen Order, let me focus on more of kind of this, it was kind of a warrior religion that they had built, and kind of how they spread across the galaxy, and how Order 66, how traumatizing truly it was. For this game, same thing. So in this game, Star-Lord, you find out that Star-Lord has a quote-unquote daughter, and it kind of plays back to a big aspect of this game is his childhood with his mother, and then the same thing for him and his daughter, and kind of how that plays against each other too, because she kind of gets infected, I guess is the right word, by the main villain of this game, which I don't want to reveal because honestly it's a really good reveal. And it's the same aspect of just understanding these stories don't just need to be this needs to happen by this time, or it doesn't need to be so linear and just kind of trekking on the same path. That's the beauty of open world games, is that there's subplots for the subplots. There's so many avenues that you can take.
There's little things that it does too. One of my favorite bits that happens, because obviously the gimmick to this game is, and from a technical aspect, is that you are in control of Star-Lord and you kind of divvy out attacks and responsibilities to the other Guardians while you're kind of just running and gunning, which fair enough. That's Star-Lord is not the super powered one in the group. You know, the guys with the powers and the big guns, and they should be doing the most damage. Right. But my favorite part is a little nuance piece at the end of the game where instead of you divvying out, orders to the team, they're just doing it themselves. And that's one of my favorite little things that might go unnoticed, in that game, is that it, even built into the mechanics of it, is the fact that you became a family and a unit, to the point where you don't have to tell them what to do. They do it themselves. And I just think that's such an awesome kind of theme to build into the gameplay. And that's what makes a good game to me, is when all that stuff hums together. So unanimously, Guardians of the Galaxy is our game of 2021. Honorable mention from me to Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which was an expansion to last year's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just another tremendous installment, unexpected installment to that game, where they dove into the character of Yuffie, who is from the original Final Fantasy VII and is introduced in a slightly different way than she's introduced in the original. Just an ambitious project that I can't stop thinking about until something comes out about the next part. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, but it doesn't quite qualify for my game of the year because it is an 8 to 10 hour kind of just expansion of what already was.
I guess in terms of honorable mentions, I'll just throw out the Iki Island expansion to Ghost of Tsushima, one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, in terms of combat and story. And I think we even talked about this before, how the middle of that game kind of got bogged down a little bit. But what keeps it elevated is it's kind of the inverse of this, is the gameplay itself is so intriguing. And it's so kind of, you kind of feel like a samurai yourself when you're playing that game, which is super important. So just kind of diving back into that world, and just the way that game is kind of created and shot is just incredible. I mean, it's kind of cornerstone, in my opinion, for kind of modern games, and could be really a gold standard going forward, and something a lot of other developers kind of use as kind of a baseline of how these games are supposed to look. And
also much like Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, unexpected.
Definitely.
I wasn't anticipating an expansion to Ghost of Tsushima. I was anticipating, a PS5 port, obviously, kind of, because that game, already pushing the technical limitations.
That game was meant to be on a PS5,
So that game was already pushing the technical limitations of the PS4. I was expecting a PS5 port. Got that, and they were like, hey, here's a whole nother kind of side story. I was like, whoa. So that was cool, I totally agree with you on that.
Can't wait for the movie.
Yeah.
If they do that movie right, they might be onto something special.
Yeah, especially since that game is so inspired by the Kurosawa films, I
mean, I was playing on the Kurosawa filter just because I think I watched either Ran, or I might have watched Seven Samurai a couple weeks back, and then I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to play Ghost of Tsushima now, so amazing. Just a PSA for the studio that's making it. Don't go find an actor, because you already do have an actor. Just get the guy that played Jin Sakai in the game and just do that. Then
our final category, the big one. I was originally naming this best and worst movies of the year, but I thought that was a little too kind of, judgmental, because film is so subjective. Anything
it's tough to make a movie. No matter what movie you make, it's difficult.
And so we went with something a little more objective, our favorite and least favorite of 2021. So why don't you kick us off?
I mean, I'll start with the least favorite, because I think people already know what my favorite movie of the year was. So, I mean, if I had to pick my least favorite, it would be Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I've said that this movie was the post-credit scene. That's all the point of this movie. I mean, you talk about Carnage and how not integral, but how the lineage of him is so important to Venom, and how they kind of just used it for an hour and just threw it right away. It stinks a little bit and that kind of goes back into these Sony movies, and another fear that I have for this, and this is honestly probably me talking before I figure that Andrew Garfield might just be the Sony Spider-Man, is that what's the point? What's the point of any of this?
Yeah. We talked about that last week, how they kind of lucked themselves out of the corner that they built themselves into.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of good stuff for that movie, Woody Harrelson is amazing. I love how the core of this movie, funny enough, is the relationship between Eddie and Venom, and I mean the love relationship between them, because they're dating. I don't care what anybody says. It's a relationship, and it's hilarious, man. It's great. But, I mean, in terms of the movies, there's nothing really special about this movie, in my opinion. Besides Tom Hardy, there's nothing that this movie does for me. They got that one joke off about the father. I'll take that joke. That was great. But, yeah, just nothing about this movie excites me. I knew what I was going to get into when I got there. I mean, the Carnage sequence when he emerged for the first time was cool, the prison break, but there's no substance. I mean, even Scream, you could take Scream out of the movie. The only reason Scream's there is because the symbiote with the frequency thing, that's it. Carnage, again, just gets thrown away by the end of the movie as fast as he came in. So, yeah, just no harm, no foul, and then it's just for the post-credit scene. That's why it's only an hour 30, in my opinion.
Fair. My least favorite is Halloween Kills. Just not very good. And funny enough, the last one was good. The rebooted Halloween with bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back into the fold was really good, and this one just it tried to do. This is a sneaky entrant for the nostalgia thing, because they tried to bring back scenes from previous Halloween movies and kind of tie them all together. And that's already a universe that is loaded with nonsense. So it just doesn't work. It's a decent slasher flick, but it's just not as good as the previous one, which is a shame, because I thought that the franchise had kind of gotten new life. And then this one came out and it was just, it's just disappointing. You know what I mean? I think it's a good kind of counter to like your Venom thing, because like you kind of got what you expected, and it was like, But this I was expecting a little more than what I got, and that made it even more disappointing for me. You know what I mean? So yeah, just not overly thrilled. And I know the next one is supposed to come out this year. Halloween Ends, and I'm just like, maybe the last one should have just been the end.
Right. So what was your favorite movie of the year?
It's probably Spider-Man No Way Home.
Fair. More than fair.
We talked about this in the review. It hit every impossible bar that it had set, which is, in this day and age, never happens.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, with the fan culture is probably the big reason for that, why it never kind of lands. But.
Phenomenal performances across the board from everyone that's in it, pretty much. Action sequences are pretty good to great. Really brought back kind of the Raimi feel, in particular for both Green Goblin fights. The first one in the apartment complex, and the second one near the Statue of Liberty. I talked about Willem Dafoe earlier. Just absolute scene stealer.
Menace to society.
Just great to have a villain who didn't give a crap about anything.
Yes. Yep.
It's crazy how simple that is sometimes. Which is kind of funny, because you talked about the villain thing before and giving them nuance, but there is nuance to that character.
Yeah, he is. He does have it.
But there's just something to be said about a villain who just wants to mess stuff up. You know what I mean? And he just comes in, and it's immediately apparent to Tom Holland Spider-Man. He's like, whoa, I am way in over my head with this particular guy. Yeah. Because he just doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything. He just wants to cause chaos and anarchy. I mean, he comes on the scene and blows up just a bunch of cars for no reason. Right.
Yep. And I mean, I guess I've just been talking about emotional bits all episode, so I'll talk about kind of more the emotional bits in mine, and kind of the more character building bits in this. But I mean, the movie completely it feels like a completely different movie once his spider sense activates, when he realizes that when Goblin flips, the movie feels like, it doesn't feel like the first half of the movie. It feels like a completely different movie. And that, however long it was, hour 20 of movie, was some of the best superhero content you'll ever see in your entire life. I mean, it feels much more raw, and it's funny because I was watching, somebody posted a clip of the last scene, and you know what I loved? This man has super strength, spider sense, webs, and he was just boxing Willem Dafoe at the end of the movie. It's great, but even the sequences, so Andrew Garfield, I mean, garners a lot of attention from everybody these days, including ourselves. And him, it's not even him catching MJ at the end. It's when they're on the rooftop and they're talking about great power and great responsibility. It's just, he could turn it off and turn it on so easily for any emotion that he needs to gain. And then going back to the godfather of all this, Tobey Maguire too, I think he's getting a little bit lost in translation. He also was my favorite I've ever seen him in my entire life as Peter Parker. He's old man Peter Parker, and I love the line he throws out where I just get the sense that he needs my help. Like, it's just that he truly is like turning into Uncle Ben almost, where it's like he needs my help, so I've seen everything that I've needed to see. I'm gonna help you this time because it's the right thing to do. Because they even say, like, it's the line. It's the great power. And then Marissa Tomei just turned it up when in her unfortunate death in the movie. When I think I was talking to somebody about this. I love the line where she kind of corrects Peter, and then obviously it's the joke, when you say great power, great responsibility, you die immediately. But I love the line where she throws out where it's just my moral mission. It's just like, okay, that's my moral mission because it's the right thing to do. It's not that I need to do this for people. It's that I have the ability to help people and get them food and get them shelter, so I'm going to do it. You have the ability to, swing across the city and save somebody at a moment's notice. So now you have to do that. And that bit is what makes Spider-Man so great and what makes all superheroes so great. And this film understood it down to his final swing in the movie, which I don't know why that hits so close to home. I don't understand what makes that so integral. I kind of do, but I don't. There's just something, it's just this feeling you get of that final swing. It's this genuine feeling of full out euphoria of like, I've seen the most complete origin of a Spider-Man from not just one movie or like a first hour of a movie. Like, this is truly like a 3-film arc to get him to the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man. I just think that's super special.
Agreed. Well, you wanna talk about your favorite movie?
Yes.
Even though we all know what it is.
So, Dune.
We're back. This podcast was built on Dune. And we've circled all the way around.
Yes. So, I don't even know what to say about this movie. I've said everything I've needed to say about it. And so...
Just had to make it official.
Yeah.
Facebook official.
Yeah, Facebook official. This is my favorite movie of the year. And I was kind of warring with myself if this was my favorite movie, because Minari was right there for my favorite movie of the year. And I was like really kind of... I wanted to be that film guy that was just like...
That's why I gave you your own category.
Right.
So you could have fun with this one.
Yeah. So I actually just watched Dune 5 days ago, something like that. And it was during the sequence where they had bought the crawler down and they were on the ornithopters and they went down and they tried to save the crew when the equipment doesn't go right. Whatever. This movie, it's mixed incredibly well. It's edited so well. It's just this little sequence where Timothée Chalamet goes back to the line where Gurney Halleck's walking up to him and he kind of has the sense and he just says, "I recognize your footsteps," and then it just has that Hans Zimmer score kind of blare behind it. But this movie is so intricate. That's why I love it so much. It's so much deeper than people give it credit for. And I mean, that goes back to, if I'm going to be the Martin Scorsese of this podcast, it goes back to the cool, I love Spider-Man No Way Home. I love all these superhero movies. Amazing. Awesome. But is it so bad that we can have stuff that's more, has a little bit more under the surface of it? Like, Christopher Nolan kind of gets the flack for that on Interstellar and some of the other movies he does, where it is supposed to be the fandom movie of the year, like the non-superhero fandom movie of the year. But why do I have to think? And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I really love the dramatic sequences in the dream sequences in the movie. I think are really good. Like, they're some of the best I've ever seen in terms of dream sequences, because it's just Denis Villeneuve. I think that's what really makes it. It's just he gets this understanding of storytelling that I've seen it before, but I really haven't seen it before. It's very thought out, and it's very complex. There's so much complexity about this movie that makes it really special. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. I know that the big complaints about this movie is where the movie ended, but this is really a two-parter. It's not a one-parter, and that it was very anticlimactic. But again, this isn't the end of the story. This is truly, Zendaya even throws the line out, this is the beginning. Like, when you talk about scratching, this is half of the first book of 6 books. Like, this is a surface scratch of what we're truly going to get. So, yeah, down to visual storytelling, and I think this is one of the best showcases of showing, not telling, in a lot of aspects. And again, that's something general audience might not like, because you're not being told what's happening. Mm-hmm. I personally love that a lot, because I have to think a little bit. I think that's a really good thing, in my opinion. So,
does a great job on some of these things we talked about when we reviewed Dune. You can go back and listen to that episode.
Shameless plug.
But, it does a great job of establishing this world that's foreign to so many people. Mm-hmm. Does a good job of explaining the lingo, the characters, the story, what's going on, who's who, what family's doing what. It does an amazing job of that. Mm-hmm. And this property has long been deemed unfilmable. Mm-hmm. So to even get it to this point is a testament to the skill of Denis Villeneuve, I said it when we left the movie that it was tremendous. Yeah. I loved it. Definitely a movie that needed to be seen in theaters to be fully appreciated, and not enough good things can be said about that. Yeah. Looking forward to the second part.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Things are going to kick up in a big way.
Yeah, because I love the sequence where he gets hit with the spice, and then they're in the tent. That tent sequence, I think, is really good right after Duke Leto dies, and he's kind of mourning his father, but at the same time, his powers are really being awakened, and he kind of sees it's the complexity of that character, because he's not just this modern Luke Skywalker where he's just a good guy. That's not it. Paul Atreides truly, it's kind of like the idea of like world leaders. That's really what this comes down to. It's the world leader type of thing, where no world leader can be 100% a good person to execute the perfect utopia, because sacrifices and not bad decisions, but
absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly. Oh no. Not back to Batman vs Superman. That line happened before that, but no, but it's really good, because it's like the holy war spread in my name. It's like an unquenchable fire. It's just, this could be my fault, but at the same time, it's even Duke Leto says in the movie, we're going to cultivate desert power, and you're using these people just to add to your own power, which you're going to do it in a more noble way than other people would. You're not just going to either kill them off like the Harkonnens did, but at the same time, you are just trying to further your power. It's so much more complex than just, well, we need to get the spice off this planet so we can ship it off world, and there's this emperor that's trying to kill us. Like, cool. And then also my son is becoming awakened with this prescient power. Even better. And then the great houses are being taken out one by one. Like, there's so much, it's so much deeper than just the base level story. And I think, like I said, you don't get that without Denis Villeneuve. You said it was unfilmable, and it got filmed in possibly one of the greatest working today. So
there it is. Dune, everybody.
Yeah. If you didn't think it was coming.
We're back.
You knew this was coming, Pete.
We circled back to Dune. So that's it for 2021. It's in the past. It's over. Let the past die, as the great Kylo Ren once said.
I was just... those movies were just on TV the other day, and I just had it on in the background. Underrated sequence was the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. However much you hate that movie, that opening sequence with Kylo Ren going back to core angsty Kylo Ren, just clearing out a forest of aliens, amazing.
Yeah, let the past die. So 2022 preview is way more than I thought it was.
You just would have said the Batman and then just log and get off?
Well, yeah, there's that.
There's a lot. There's so much this year.
So, just real quick. The Batman, obviously. Couple months, unless it gets Morbius, which I don't think it will. Speaking of that, Morbius is also coming out this year.
But on April 1st.
Haha, funny. April Fool's Day. Thor: Love and Thunder is coming out this year. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is coming out this year. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse Part 1, Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. That's going to be huge. Black Panther obviously has a ton of question marks surrounding it. Don't know if that's even going to end up coming out this year. What else? Uncharted is coming out this year. Tom Holland's back with Mark Wahlberg.
Black Adam.
Black Adam is coming out this year. Much anticipated entrance of The Rock into the superhero genre. Fantastic Beasts, Harry Potter returns. Secrets of Dumbledore. Jurassic World, Dominion is coming back. Aquaman 2 is coming. And then the big one, maybe not the big one, maybe the big one, money-wise the big one, Avatar 2 is finally coming out. James Cameron. The Odyssey of Avatar 2.
Yes.
It's finally here. The just recently dethroned as the biggest movie of all time by Avengers Endgame.
Thanks to a cheeky little, let's put the movie back in theaters with unfinished scenes and people are still going to see it, including myself.
Including me, yes.
We're not beyond it.
Once upon a time, Avatar was the biggest movie of all time, inexplicably in the minds of many, but I would argue it's the only movie, well, no, it's not the only movie I've ever seen in 3D, but it's the best movie I've ever seen in 3D, because it's not the train's coming out of the screen and coming to get you. It's the subtle things that movie did so well in 3D, immersing you in the world of Pandora. I still remember the 3D effects to this day. That's how good it was. So, hey, look, it's happening.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to have this capture the same imagination that the original did, but I'm going to see it because I've been waiting for it for 10 years.
Right. We got Batgirl coming this year.
Batgirl is coming this year.
Kenobi.
Yep. On the TV side of things, yes.
That might be one of my most anticipated of this year in terms of Disney Plus. And then speaking of Disney Plus, they're rattling off how many shows? At least 4 shows, I believe, this year.
So so Ms. Marvel,
Moon Knight,
She-Hulk, Moon Knight.
And possibly Echo.
Yeah. It's going to be another busy year for Marvel. They're not slowing down anytime soon. Buzz Lightyear origin story is coming out this year. With Chris Evans.
Cool.
Chris Pratt as Mario is coming out this year.
I thought we were going to forget about that one.
We'll never forget about that. I alluded to Halloween Ends earlier. We have Moonfall coming out, which we talked about last week.
I had to try to convince him not to say Moonfall, but you can't keep Roland Emmerich down.
Sonic 2 is coming out, which is actually kind of exciting because the first one was surprisingly good. I think we hit pretty much everything.
Should I run through like the 20 non-fandom movies that I put on here?
Sure.
All right, what do we got? So Olivia Wilde's back with Don't Worry Darling. So your boy Harry Styles is back to act some more before he gets back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Star Fox. So Florence Pugh and Harry Styles are in this kind of suspenseful horror thriller, kind of. We have Martin Scorsese's back this year with the first time that Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro are working together on Killers of the Flower Moon. That's going to be good.
Never heard of him.
Yikes. David Fincher's back with Michael Fassbender. So I'm going to probably talk about it when we get to what we've been watching, but I've recently been rewatching all the X-Men movies. So Michael Fassbender, I think, is one of the best actors that have ever touched this earth. I just think his screen presence is incredible. It's something that can never be passed up on when he's in a movie. So he's back with David Fincher, which, I mean, that's kind of like a dream kind of duo right there that you never thought about. So they're on the movie The Killer. So again, getting back to what makes David Fincher really good. We have The Northman. Some of you probably saw the trailer for Robert Eggers' newest kind of, how do I put this, kind of this quasi horror / kind of this Viking film where it's going to be amazing. Willem Dafoe. You have the Skarsgård brothers are in this. You have, why can't I remember her name that we want to play Black Cat?
Oh, Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy's in this. It's going to be really good. We have Ethan Hawke and Nicole Kidman, so really great cast right there. Jordan Peele's back this year with his movie Nope, which is going to have, I believe, Keke Palmer and Steven Yeun are going to be in this movie, so that's going to be really interesting. So those are just a couple that I could just remember off the top of my head that I'm throwing out here. I think we have Ari Aster's back this year from Hereditary and Midsommar fame. He's with, funny enough, Joaquin Phoenix, but it's not going to be a horror movie. Well, it could have horror elements, but non-horror movie, Disappointment Boulevard. And my last one that I want to talk about, one of my most inspirational directors to myself personally, is Damien Chazelle, and he's back with guess who? Tobey Maguire's back to acting.
Yes.
That's not Spider-Man No Way Home. So he's directing a movie called Babylon, which is going to have Brad Pitt in it, and Tobey Maguire's back. So that's going to be fun stuff. Good stuff. I have a very good feeling about this movie, this year for movies, in terms of not even just these fandom movies, but non-fandom movies. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I want to start to bring you guys non-fandom movie reviews, actual reviews of movies that don't have a superhero in it.
Yeah, so we're all heroes, to be honest.
We can be heroes.
But yeah, I agree. When I told you when we looked at the 2022 list, we were like, whoa. Yeah. It's a little overwhelming, but exciting at the same time, because it has been such just a bummer of like the last like 2.5 years. Yeah. So hopefully 2022, once we're through the winter, maybe we can finally start putting everything behind us that's happened in the last 2 years and look forward, because there is some really great stuff coming. So yeah, that's our wrap up for 2021.
Interesting year.
Very interesting. We didn't even talk about the Snyder Cut.
We didn't talk about Invincible. The Boys came out this year too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think you're right.
Boys season 3 or 2? Season 2 this year?
3 is coming, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Superman. A lot of Superman and Superman-esque characters this year.
Yeah.
Who do we get? We got Omni-Man, we have actual black suit Superman, we have
Icarus,
and we have from The Boys, we have
Homelander.
Yeah, Homelander.
And we have actual regular TV Superman.
Right. Who are you most afraid of out of those 4? And why is it Omni-Man?
It's Omni-Man, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the mustache.
Yeah, it's the mustache. It's the fact that he's voiced by J.K. Simmons also does not help anything. Yeah, if one needed to wipe out the Earth, I'm taking Omni-Man, and I'm not looking back.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. You can follow us at Project_INF Twitter. Oh, I did it again.
You did it again.
Project_INF_pod on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook, like us on there. New episodes drop on Facebook as soon as they're published, which you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're everywhere now.
Yeah. We're all over the place. Just like Andrew Garfield, we're everywhere.
You can email us at theprojectinfinitepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram
at the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you. And that's it for us. Next week, dunno.
Yeah, don't know. I'm going to campaign for us to review Daredevil.
It was supposed to be Morbius.
Was it supposed to be? Oh, yeah, it would have been Morbius by this time. So maybe Daredevil. I gotta do some campaigning to get us to review Daredevil next week.
They screwed us up.
Yeah, they did. Threw everything off.
Yeah, we have to get creative over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, we had a lot of fandom. I think it was just a stretch from, I'm pretty sure after the MCU fights, it was just every episode was something that was happening. Thanks, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Book of Boba Fett review in a few weeks.
Right.
But up until then, maybe we'll do a Star Wars thing.
Good show.
Maybe we'll do a Star Wars thing next week.
I hope you guys are watching Book of Boba Fett.
It's been pretty good.
Very I did not think it was going to be that good. I knew it was probably going to be solid, but they had some twists and turns in that show I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
What you been doing?
Well, I just finished Dexter, the new Dexter. Dexter, new Dexter. Pretty good. Man, the season finale is going to be very divisive. I'm not going to spoil it on here, but boy. People are going to be either relieved or upset. Nothing in between.
Mm-hmm. That's basically 2021 in a nutshell.
And then I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn again, because Horizon Forbidden West comes out next month, and so I wanted to play Horizon Zero Dawn again, and that game is fantastic. I love it.
Nice.
So that's it. That's it for me.
Cool. What have I been doing? I've been replaying Jedi Fallen Order a little bit. Just got back into it 2 days ago, so I've been chipping away at that a little bit. I've been rewatching the X-Men movies. That's probably my biggest one right now. So just kind of rapid fire, because I think I'm on First Class right now. So X-Men 1, I kind of rate it the same. It's very for its time. I wouldn't even say ahead of its time. It's very, very present of, I think it was 2000 that movie came out. Very present. It was the new X-Men, Grant Morrison's new X-Men, kind of redubbed for live action, and solid stuff. It's nothing crazy. solid start. And then you get to X2 and it's okay, now they're onto something cool right now. And then you get to X3 and it feels like the cheapest movie that it's one of the cheapest superhero movies you've ever seen. And it doesn't make sense because of what you did on the last two movies. They were trying to go big or go home. Some bad people worked on those movies too, which is really unfortunate as well. Mm-hmm. And X-Men Origins Wolverine, I'm not even going to get into it. I wish I hadn't rewatched it. Will.i.am's in that movie. Mm-hmm. They stuck poor Lee Schreiber in that movie too. Mm-hmm. I don't know what was going on, but
gave us Ryan Reynolds though.
Yeah, they did give us. Yeah, They gave us Ryan Reynolds. They didn't give us Wade Wilson. They gave us just Ryan Reynolds. So, and then I'm about to watch First Class, and I cannot be more excited to watch that because I think that's one of the better superhero movies that's ever been made. It's really good, really unexpected. I mean, funny enough for this episode, super unexpected. Maybe we should do an X-Men thing this year. We haven't talked a lot of X-Men. Just because.
Yeah, we can do an X-Men thing for sure.
Yeah. Look forward to some Star Wars, some X-Men, maybe not some normal Avenger stuff.
Yeah, we got to get a little creative for the next, honestly, probably a couple months until Batman Mania takes
Batman's
over.
Going to save us. Hopefully we do just a preview the week before. I might need to stretch it out a little bit more. We might review a comic soon. We haven't done that yet, and that's my bread and butter right there.
Technically did do that for our unaired pilot episode.
Oh, they're not supposed to know about that.
I'm saving it.
Yeah,
I'm saving it for a week when inevitably one of us can't do this.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm just gonna drop the unaired pilot.
Yeah, the unaired pilot. We need to save that for the 1 million subscriber episode. The unaired pilot of the Project Infinite podcast. That's gonna be a fun one.
We recorded a couple, but there's one in particular that I'm quite fond of.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's it. Next week, maybe we'll do a Star Wars thing. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about it.
Campaign for Daredevil, but maybe we will do a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, the Stephen Yoon on the podcast, everybody.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of all the things that you talked about.
And Stephen Yeun happened to be there for everything. Yeah, he was there for a bunch of stuff that I talked about. I'll accept that. I'll conversely give you the Willem Dafoe of the podcast. He's very unexpected. He said, that film sense of yours. He said, that's a neat trick.
I love Willem Dafoe. I've recently watched Spider-Man 1 again, and he's just so good.
It's amazing. He's great.
Here's the real truth. All right, I'm gonna clock out now before I go 5 minutes of a Willem Dafoe impression.
That's what I thought when I was gonna do when we talked about Dune. I thought I was just gonna relive that movie again. Go watch Dune and just don't think about a Marvel movie when you watch Dune. And trust me, it gets better.
True.
Watch Eternals tomorrow.
Oh yeah, Eternals is on Disney Plus tomorrow. I'm gonna watch that again.
Watch the Suicide Squad also because we didn't get
Peacemaker's
to talk about
coming out soon.
Oh yeah, Peacemaker comes out this Thursday, so look out for that. So watch the Suicide Squad and then watch Peacemaker because Suicide Squad I easily also could have put in the most surprising movies, but I had a feeling ever since the first trailer that movie was going to be good, so
right.
I didn't think that would do it justice, but great movie.
All right, guys. Next week, like I said, probably a Star Wars thing.
Could be Daredevil.
We'll see.
Daredevil.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.